Greetings, everyone. I'm honored to host our celebration today, a very special day when our nation honors the legacy and impact of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. On such a day, I must start with gratitude. Gratitude to the Reverend King for his legacy of leadership and civil action and his gift of transformative, empowering language. And gratitude to those in our own community, our students, faculty, our staff, alumni, and our civic leaders who dedicate themselves every day to championing diversity in all its forms and promoting the civil community, equality, and respect. Dr. King's words and spirit, his passion for justice, and his incredible deeds continue to inspire us. Reflecting on his legacy feels especially meaningful to me this year. Events unfolding all year call out for our nation to uphold our foundational principles of justice, equality, freedom, and democracy, and to find hope in the humanity we share. Today, we are coming together as community to celebrate his transformative legacy and to reinforce his idea of a beloved community, a truly brotherly society, which Dr. King said in 1966 must be the truest objective we seek in life. Dr. King told us truth matters. Truth matters when we see innocent people fall victim to a virus, injustice, or violence. Truth matters when we talk about elections, wars, climate change. Truth matters when we talk about suffering in our own communities, homelessness, addiction, and mental illness. Dr. King fervently believed the biblical verse that the truth will set us free, free from historic prejudice, from ignorance, and from fear. At our greatest, universities are there to help society identify and elevate truth, to be places where each generation comes to learn and where, as a community, we seek to use our gifts and our knowledge for the good of others. Dr. King came to Los Angeles at least 24 times, including several visits to USC, where he spoke at our Bovard Auditorium. One time, a bomb threat cleared the building. Another time, he told his audience, "I'm a Baptist preacher and I'm in the heart-changing business." The many death threats he received didn't change this. He taught that violence had to be rejected and replaced with love and peace. Over the last year, we've seen resilience much like Dr. King taught. When the pandemic hit, our community came together to offer help where it was most needed. When marchers protested the deaths of George Floyd and others, our community embraced action to confront racial injustice. And just last week, when we saw a violent mob in Washington try to subvert our democracy and intimidate our elected leaders to invalidate our election, they stayed focused on their service to the nation and went ahead and confirmed Joe Biden's Electoral College victory. Through it all, we have witnessed horror and heartbreak, but also heroism and hope. And Dr. King's words, his belief, and his strength will continue to guide us toward the beloved community we seek. Thank you for tuning in today to join our celebration of Dr. King. And a special thanks to today's wonderful speakers and our talented event staff who organized this virtual event. Dr. King's words in his final speech, delivered in Memphis the night before he was assassinated, give us a clear path ahead. He said, "Let us stand with greater determination, and let us move on in these powerful days, these days of challenge to make America what it ought to be." It is now my privilege and pleasure to introduce Los Angeles County Supervisor for the 2nd District, the Honorable Holly Mitchell.
Hi, I'm Supervisor Holly Mitchell, and I'm proud to join the home of the Trojans and the entire USC community in acknowledging and celebrating Martin Luther King Day 2021. This year's King Day celebration comes at a time when we're facing an unprecedented challenge and attacks on our nation's democracy. This is the challenge and the opportunity we have before us, and I trust in the rising leaders at USC who will join us in meeting this moment currently as students on the campus, and when you leave the safety of your campus and go out into the greater world. So let's honor Dr. King's legacy by continuing to fight on. Let's remain vigilant about ending the dual pandemics of COVID-19 and systemic racism. Let's fight on with kindness to each other and service to our community. Thank you and happy King Day.
Good morning and happy Martin Luther King Day to all you Trojans who are tuning in. My name is Pedro Noguera. I'm the Dean of the Rossier School of Education, and it's my privilege to say a few words about the significance of this day. I want to start by posing a question. Why do we honor this individual in the first place? After all, we don't even honor Presidents Lincoln or Washington anymore with their own day. Why this man? What is there about him and his legacy that is so important that we should close our banks and post offices and universities to pause for a moment to think about his work and his mission? I start with this question because I know it's easy for the meaning of a day like this to get lost. For a day off in January to become nothing more than a chance to sleep in late or get some extra work done. I think it's important that we not allow the great significance of Dr. King's life and his work to be lost, particularly now in this country. Many of you may not know, but the creation of this holiday was not readily embraced. It required a sustained movement to get President Ronald Reagan to sign it into law, and it required several states debating for years before all 50 states finally approved it. Today, this national holiday is occurring at a moment of political conflict in our country, of great economic hardship for many of our fellow citizens and other Americans, and a health crisis. I think it's important that we reflect on how King's legacy relates to the challenges we face right now. In some ways, you could say it's ironic that we slow things down for a holiday to honor this individual, because in his life, he never slowed down. From a very early age, he was leading and organizing boycotts, challenging white supremacy in all its forms in the face of great violence by the police and by racist mobs. He was arrested repeatedly, nearly lost his life on a couple occasions before being assassinated. And he retained this sense of serenity and dignity throughout. He refused to feed the violence and the hatred that swirled around him. So in many respects, when we honor Dr. King, we honor the best in the American tradition. There are some who witnessed the incidents at the Capitol, the storming of the Capitol by mobs bent on violence, who say this is not us. Well, those who know America's history know it is certainly part of the history. It is part of who we are as Americans, but it is not all. Dr. King and all that he stood for is also part of that legacy. And so at this time, it is very important that we too embrace that narrative, a narrative that a peaceful society rooted in justice is possible for us. That we can in fact confront our problems, and as I said, we are faced with a broad array of economic, environmental, political, and social hardships. But it is by not losing sight of the possibilities for change and for resolving ourselves to work together to create the kind of society that King envisioned, that we keep that dream alive. Dr. King was not a naive optimist. He knew very well that the forces arrayed against this movement were formidable and deeply entrenched. But he understood the importance of promoting a shared vision, one that we could work on together. So on this day, I encourage you to use this moment to reflect on the legacy of Dr. King's message, what it means for us as Trojans at USC, who are committed to education. How do we use our education to address the many challenges not only facing our society, but the world today? I encourage you to not only support that vision, but to actively work toward it. I wish you all the very best, and I encourage you to continue to fight on for peace and for justice.
Hi, my name is Anna Cockrell. I'm from the USC track and field team. Martin Luther King Jr. Day has always been important to me, and the importance of it is something my parents instilled in myself and my siblings when I was very young. They took us to Black History museums. They made us listen to his speeches, watch his speeches, read them. We had to research quotes from him. So they very early on taught us the importance of knowing Black history, knowing the legacies of those who came before us, and understanding the role Black Americans have played. And as I've gotten older, my understanding of the holiday and of Martin Luther King Jr. has increased as I've learned more about the movement and the people that were in his orbit, and how there were multiple organizations fighting for Black liberation who were advocating for different strategies at the same time. It's been really illuminating for me to understand how many different forms activism can take on and how many different people play a role. And to learn about people who were in Martin Luther King Jr.'s orbit, like Bayard Rustin, who was a Black gay man, who later went on to fight for gay rights as well as Black liberation. Like Nina Simone, who was an artist and a musician who decreased her musical output as her activism grew. Like Coretta Scott King, his wife, who played such a role in allowing him to be able to do the work that he was doing. As I've learned more about these people, the holiday has taken on more significance for me, and just understanding how it takes perseverance and patience and dedication and coalition building to make change. It takes so many people to make change. And often it's so unpopular during the time. To get older and learn that in his era, Martin Luther King Jr. was very unpopular. And it took dedicated work and activism from his peers and the people who loved him to get a holiday for him, and to get us to the point today where we recognize that his contributions were so important. That's really eye-opening for me. Just to know that activism is often unpopular in the moment, but when you're on the right side of history, it will always come to light. So Martin Luther King Jr. Day, his life and his legacy has taught me a lot of valuable lessons that I'm very thankful for as a young Black woman who wants to advocate for equity and social justice. So I'm very thankful for the holiday. I hope people take this time to reflect. And I'm grateful for everything that the people who fought during the civil rights movement, everything that they sacrificed and everything that they accomplished. Thanks. Fight on.
Hello, Trojan family. On behalf of USC Dornsife, I am honored to provide remarks on this day as we celebrate Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. Last year, along with members of the Los Angeles community, I visited Selma and Montgomery. We were there on the occasion of the 55th anniversary of the March from Selma to Montgomery. Beginning with the bus boycott in 1955 and later with the March from Selma to Montgomery for the right to vote, Montgomery was the epicenter of the civil rights movement. The very streets, buildings, and bridges that we visited were symbols of the movement. Echoing through these structures were stories of some of our citizens' greatest trials and triumphs. This was a trip that was particularly important to me, even though I was born and raised here in California. My parents were born and raised in Alabama, so I guess you could say I have Alabama roots. As Dr. King talked about the fierce urgency of now in his I Have a Dream speech, I don't have to remind any of you that now is the time for us to reflect upon all that he stood for. I can't think of a greater way than to say thank you to Dr. Martin Luther King for all that he did for my freedom and for justice for all, than to celebrate his legacy and to live the dream to the best of my ability. Happy King Day, Trojan family, and continue to fight on.
Martin Luther King was courageous. If we really want to honor his legacy, we too must be courageous, especially in these times. Martin Luther King took serious, unapologetic action in his pursuit of justice for people of color and poor people in America. If we really want to honor his legacy, we too must take serious, unapologetic action, especially in these times. In his letter from a Birmingham jail, Dr. King penned a critique of what he termed do-nothingism. He argued that complacency is indeed complicity. The best way to actualize Dr. King's vision for America is to do something, all we can, in fact, to fight racial injustice, white supremacy, white nationalism, hate, and evil. The inescapable racial realities of the tragic events at the U.S. Capitol on January 6th make painstakingly clear that King's dream for these United States remains unfulfilled. Do-somethingism is required of each of us in these times if we are to fulfill King's dream for racial and economic justice, equity, and human rights. Do something.
Economic justice was at the core of what Martin Luther King Jr. fought for, and this remains a central tenet of what the Urban League fights for today. We remember Dr. King Jr. as a civil rights icon for African Americans, but he was also a passionate champion for the poor of all races and backgrounds, for the people without boots who had no bootstraps to pull up. On July 4th, 1965, after the Montgomery boycott and after the March on Washington and passage of the Civil Rights Act, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. spoke at Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta. He said, "I still have a dream that one day all of God's children will have food and clothing and material well-being for their bodies, culture, and education for their minds, and freedom for their spirits." On this National Day of Service, we remember Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. for his legacy of fighting for economic empowerment for the poor. In 2021, the Los Angeles Urban League centennial year, I am honored to lead this organization and continue the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. and the fight for economic justice. Today, our communities are facing unprecedented hardships. Now more than ever, we must not only honor and remember the legacy of Dr. King, we must act. We must fight for universal health care, an increase in the minimum wage, and better schools. But we must also take care of our neighbors, look out for one another, support our local businesses, and believe in the strength and the resiliency of our communities. The best way we can honor Dr. King's legacy is to act on his inspiration.
Alpha Phi Fraternity Incorporated was founded on Ice Cold Tuesday, December 4th, 1906, on the campus of Cornell University, Ithaca, New York, 14850. Alpha Phi Fraternity Incorporated develops leaders, promotes brotherhood and academic excellence while providing service and advocacy for our communities. The motto is, first of all, servants of all, we shall transcend all. And that is exactly what MLK did. He has transcended us all. It's an honor to be speaking to you all today because MLK is the biggest reason that I'm an Alpha and a member of this fraternity. I had the honor and privilege of meeting his daughter, Dr. Bernice King. And one thing she said that stood with me is that she said her father always said he was never fighting against evil or fighting against racism or even white supremacy. What he was doing was fighting for our beloved community, right? And with that in mind, the Trojan family is worldwide, and our community is everything. So with everything going on, it's really easy to give up on the semester, give up on ourselves, give up on America, but it's difficult to work and believe in what we have to do. Until what happens to any of us affects all of us, we can only be just a fragment of what we are supposed to be. I leave a word of you just for my own. No matter how good we are at whatever we do, we're better with the help of others. MLK had a dream and it's still alive today. And I'm here to say it's here to stay. Fight on, USC. A5.
Hello, Trojan family. My name is Mahogany Borrayo Gilchrist, and I am a doctoral student at USC's Rossier School of Education. Today, we celebrate Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And for me, today is a day of remembrance of Dr. King's service to the Black American community, the educational community, and the national community, promoting equity through love, education, and service. As a student at USC and an educational change agent that is navigating educational structures of our nation, and the political unrest currently plaguing our country, I find solace and hope and strength to continue pushing for educational, social, and political equity in one of Dr. King's addresses from 1947, surrounding the duty of education to society. This excerpt properly expresses my belief of what education is to our society. The function of education is to teach one to think intensively and to think critically. Intelligence plus character. That is the goal of true education. My hope is that on this day, today in 2021, that we use this day for us all to reset, rethink, and realign our focus to continue breaking the barriers that have plagued our nation for far too long. And as a community, society, and most importantly, a family, that we be the leaders that positively change the world. Happy Dr. Martin Luther King Day, and fight on.
When I think about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., I think of an American hero who preached nonviolence but was not afraid to stand up and speak truth to power. I'll never forget the day that my brothers and sisters and I, growing up in Watts, huddled around a small black and white TV, watching Dr. King as he delivered his I Have a Dream speech in Washington, D.C. at the Poor People's March. And we watched as this small man in dark skin called upon a divided nation to rise above our differences and to see each other for our common humanity. He asked men and women of different races and faiths to embrace one another as brothers and sisters and to rise and find the angels of our better nature. He even asked people who had been victimized in America to love their enemies. Can you imagine that? Now, what kind of man would do that? I'll tell you what kind. A good man, a noble man, a true leader, a hero. That's what Dr. King was to me. I'll never forget the day that he died. I was delivering newspapers on my route, riding my bicycle, when a man ran out of his home screaming, "They killed him. They killed Dr. King." And he came up to me on my bike and he stopped me. And he looked me in the eye and he said, "Son, never forget who he was. Never forget what he did for all of us." And so on this day, we celebrate Dr. King and we look at what's going on in our nation. We realize we all could use the wisdom of Dr. King right now. There's an African Akan proverb that says, "No one ever truly dies unless they are forgotten." On this day, I hope, I pray that none of us ever forget him or what he did for all of us. Happy birthday, Dr. King, and thank you. Ashe.
Greetings, Trojan family, and happy Dr. Martin Luther King Day. My name is Dr. Alyssa Richardson, and I'm an assistant professor of journalism in the Annenberg School for Communication and Journalism here at USC. When I think of Dr. King's lasting impact, I tend to regard it through the lens of photojournalism. For the last decade, I've studied how African Americans use smartphones to send urgent news to the nation about police brutality and other societal ills. More than 50 years before Darnella Frazier filmed the tragic police killing of George Floyd with her smartphone, Dr. King understood that images humanize Black people and their movements. He urged those who worked with him to photograph their marches, sit-ins, and speeches, and to sell them to news outlets who cared. For this reason, when I think of Dr. King, I think about the iconic "I Am a Man" poster boards and placards that Memphis sanitation workers carried during their strike. I think about how stoic he looked as he crossed the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Alabama to fight for Black enfranchisement. And sadly, as a student of Black history, I think of Moneta Sleet. He was the first Black man to win a Pulitzer Prize for photography, and he won it for taking the tragic picture of Dr. King's widow, Coretta, cradling their daughter in grief at his funeral. But today is not a day of sorrow. Dr. King left us with a looming and lasting legacy. And one of my favorite quotes from him, he gave me an assignment. He once said, "Darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that." And it is with love that I continue to work in the space of helping people understand each other better through the discipline of communication. On this day, take a minute to evaluate whether your work is operating in that same space of love, understanding, and healing. As a nation, I know we need it. And as a university, I know we can do it. Thank you.
I think we can all agree we have yet to achieve Dr. King's dream. We see that in the continued senseless deaths of Black men and women. We see that in the difference in the response to and treatment of the insurrection at the Capitol, compared to the social unrest following the killings of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and George Floyd. But on this day that we give tribute to Dr. King, we mustn't forget that we have seen change. We elected a Black president. Even during the protests last summer, people of all backgrounds came together to protest racial discrimination and police brutality. Georgia now has elected the first Black senator in modern times. And in 2 days, our nation inaugurates a vice president of many firsts. Even take a moment to reflect. Would our friends, co-workers, and neighbors be the same without change having occurred? Take a moment to reflect on the fact that we are standing on the burdened shoulders of so many, and there is still much change needed. Reflect on the fact that parents of especially young Black men have to have the conversation and worry about them each and every time they leave home. We need hope. We need optimism, yes, in 2021. But, in these times when we keep thinking, I can't believe this, that is topped by the bevy of the next, I can't believe this moment. A good thing to remember is there is a basis for hope and optimism. Just maybe we can reflect on what Dr. King relied on during his turbulent times. Like when he said in Selma, "We shall overcome because the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice." Change takes a long time, but it does happen. Each of us who works for social change is part of the mosaic of all who work for justice. And together, we can accomplish multitudes. I'd like to thank you for joining us today during this celebration of the life, achievements, and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.